And when we found out she was closing her doors, we reached back out to her and kind of came to a better arrangement.
A Spokane staple once slated to close its doors is getting new life thanks to new owners. An update on Soulful Soups tonight.
Hot and sunny is the name of the game. We have a beautiful Hoop Fest weekend.
It did appear that Mr. Chastain did, act in self-defense.
Once charged with murder, a local man was acquitted in a deadly stabbing. Tonight, his attorney explains why. Good evening and thank you for joining us for the KREM 2 Night Report. I'm Mark Hanrahan. Happening right now, President Donald Trump is attending a two-day NATO summit in the Netherlands. This comes as White House officials say they do not expect further American strikes on Iran. It comes as the president says the ceasefire between Israel and Iran is back on track after a phone call with his Israeli counterpart. The turnaround comes hours after the president, visibly frustrated, lashed out at both sides, claiming they violated the ceasefire he'd announced just the night before.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
The classified briefings on Iran that were expected for House members today have been postponed until Friday. And tonight, several outlets are citing two people familiar with an early intelligence assessment that found the U.S. strikes only set back Iran's nuclear program by a few months rather than destroying it. Earlier today, I asked Eastern Washington Congressman Michael Bobgardner about those reports. If that's the case, what course of action should the U.S. take? And I ask because President Trump said today Israel should not expect any more offensive military action against Iran from the U.S.
Well, the sites have certainly been significantly degraded. There's some disputes about the accuracy of this report, but certainly Iran has a lot less of a nuclear program today than they had 2 weeks ago. But that can always be reconstituted. America needs to maintain vigilance and have all options on the table. I mean, this Iranian regime is not going to have nuclear weapons. That's the key takeaway from what happened over the past few days. But it doesn't mean the Middle East is suddenly a peaceful place. There's going to be continuing challenges as well. And so I think the president, the high point of the President Trump's time in office is the way he has dealt with the Middle East.
And that was just a portion of my conversation with Representative Baumgartner earlier today. To catch that whole discussion, just head to our website. That's KREM.com. All right, let's take our first look at the forecast tonight with Chief Meteorologist Jeremy the Goo. Jeremy, today noticeably warmer than yesterday, and things are only going up from here.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Next few days are going to be pretty warm. Right now, we still sit all the way up in the 70s. Believe it or not, that is warmer than where we topped out yesterday. Temperatures staying quite mild tonight thanks to a little bit of cloud cover overhead. All day long, we've just been trending about 10 degrees above where we were 24 hours ago. Kind of an interesting weather pattern, but we have a ton of activity teeming in off the coast. And out in central Washington, a few stray raindrops starting to try to squeeze out of the sky, but really, I think this is more about the cloud cover than anything else as we move through the remainder of the evening. Tomorrow, we'll wake up to more clouds than what we saw when we ended today, and then see a little bit of sunshine. Thursday, sunny. Friday, another disturbance moves in, and that's going to drop temperatures. I think our Friday could actually wind up being around 76 or 75, but tomorrow still back in the 80s. And even as we cool down Thursday and Friday after that passing frontal boundary, we are still going to be warmer than where we were yesterday. So we're talking a warmer forecast, and it gets even hotter this weekend.
All right, sounds good. Jeremy will check back in with you later in the show. New tonight, a man charged with stabbing and killing another man outside of the Hope House last fall recently learned his fate after a 2-week trial. KREM 2's Cody Proctor sat down with the man's lawyer today, and she joins us now in the studio. Cody?
Well, right next to me is Anthony Chastain, facing a judge for the first time back in November for a second-degree murder charge after stabbing Javier Chavez. During last week's trial, a jury found him not guilty.
The summer traffic outside the old Hope House in downtown Spokane still busy. But there's no police tape outside like there was in November when Spokane police investigated the death of Javier Chavez. He'd been stabbed by 50-year-old Anthony Chastain. Police arrested him and charged him with second-degree murder. Steve Graham represented Chastain in court.
From the start, this case was kind of troubling to me because it did appear that Mr. Chastain did, act in self-defense.
Court records show witnesses saw Chastain arrive outside the old Hope House, where he got into a fight with Chavez. Chastain stayed at the scene after police say he stabbed Chavez in the chest and told officers he was protecting himself after two men attacked him. At the time, prosecutors and police say that's not what the evidence showed, and the fight was over a relationship.
This sounds like this was an ongoing beef between Mr. Chastain and Mr. Chavez, the victim, in this matter over a female, and that Mr. Chastain got in his vehicle, armed himself with a knife.
However, Graham argued Chastain had been lured after getting a message about his girlfriend's missing daughter. After a 2-week trial, a jury found Chastain not guilty on Friday. Graham believes the reason was because the physical evidence matched Chastain's version of events.
There was surveillance video that showed that, he was jumped by these two men. And there was also evidence that, he was lured down there.
He says Chastain was released from custody that night and believes he's now spending time with his family after spending months in prison. But he says there are no real winners in cases like this.
Being involved in the loss of another human life is something that weighs really heavily on a man, and I know that it's something that Anthony will always carry.
Now, Chastain's time in front of a judge is not over. He's scheduled to appear next month to figure out how much money will be needed to reimburse attorney's fees and loss of wages. In the studio, Cody Proctor, KREM 2 News.
Thank you very much. And now it's time for our Night Beat with a quick look at the day's top stories. Today, Boeing answered questions from the NTSB as federal investigators look into the official cause of the door plug blowout. Today's hearing comes nearly a year and a half into the investigation of that Boeing 737 MAX that took off from Portland. The NTSB says it will use its findings to issue new safety recommendations. Preliminary findings found that 4 bolts meant to secure the door plug were missing when the aircraft was delivered to Alaska Airlines. We have much more from this hearing coming up in just 14 minutes. Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee's plan to put millions of acres of public land on sale has been blocked. However, Lee's promises he's already revising his proposal. Those who use public land say they're at risk of irreparable damage, killing hobbies, habitats, and the livelihoods of recreation gateway communities. Washington Senator Maria Cantwell spoke out against the bill over Zoom today.
America's public lands are not for sale. We will be here to the very last minute, making sure that they do not succeed in putting this into a bill.
Cantwell went on to say selling off federal land won't lead to more affordable housing as promised, saying it's more likely to be turned into luxury resorts and golf courses. The Senate is expected to vote on the reconciliation bill by July 4th. A new round of scam texts hitting phones recently, claiming they're the Washington State Department of Transportation. The texts are not from WSDOT, and people are encouraged to file complaints with the FBI Crime Complaint Center or the Federal Trade Commission if they receive them. WSDOT has updated its website with a yellow banner indicating the texts are scams. Deputies say Spokane County residents are receiving similar texts as well. They say don't click on any link and delete or report the message. A total of 5 different aggravating circumstances put forth in writing from the state of Idaho now puts the death penalty on the table for Jason Rook, the man accused of 4 felony charges, including murder in the first degree after he allegedly killed Nathan Rogers, his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. In order for the death penalty to be given, the jury or court must find at least one of the 5 aggravating circumstances exists beyond a reasonable doubt before the death penalty can be imposed. Rook is expected back in the Kootenai County Courthouse for his trial coming up on September 22nd, and a decision on whether the death penalty will stay or not is set for July 31st. And that's it for your Night Beat. For more information on any of these stories, just head to our website. That's KREM.com. All right, don't go to bed yet. The federal government filing a lawsuit against a new Washington state law claiming it's anti-Catholic and violates the First Amendment. But first, foodies rejoice. A local restaurant thought to be closing for good, now set to reopen as the old owners pass the ladle to new ones. We're back in 90 seconds.